Over 2 decades ago, a harrowing case shocked Japan and reverberated around the world. The victim was a female student under 18 years old named Junko Furuta, who endured unimaginable brutality at the hands of 4 young men before being mercilessly murdered. Junko's story is not just a tragic tale of a life cruelly snatched away. It serves as a harrowing reminder of the depths of cruelty humans are capable of inflicting on one another. Join us as we delve into the details of this case, from the timeline of events to the heinous acts committed, to ensure that Junko Furuta's memory is never forgotten and that her cry for help and justice is heard, even in silence. More than 20 years ago, the whole world was shaken by a horrifying discovery in Japan. The victim was a female student under 18 years old. More than 2 decades have passed, but the pain that Junko Furuta's relatives and friends have suffered still cannot go away. Now, the 17-year-old girl is just a cold grave. It's making people feel endless pity. The case of female student Junko Furuta was determined to be one of the worst attacks and murders in the history of Japan. On November 22, 1989, Junko was found in a concrete dumpster on a strip of reclaimed land in Koto, Tokyo, Japan. The girl died extremely tragically at the hands of sick people and unprecedented beasts. What makes the people extremely angry is that the sentence for these barbarians is only a few short years, even though their actions are brutal. At the time of the case in 1988, Junko Furuta was a pretty 16-year-old schoolgirl in Misato, Saitama. She is always obedient, does not play around, compete, does not drink alcohol, smoke, or hang out with bad people. Not only that, Furuta always actively participates in group activities at school. With her admirable academic achievements and beautiful appearance, she always receives attention from other students, in both positive and negative ways. One of the people who falls in love with the young girl is Mayano Hiroshi, an individual male student, the leader of a group of bad boys at school. In the past, he used to hang out with the Yakuza gangster gang, so he was also a famous guy in the area. No one dared to disobey him. Mayano also offered to pursue her, but Furuta flatly refused because such a beautiful and talented girl could be paired with such a thug who refused to study. Love should not turn into hate. From then on, he considered little Furuta a thorn in his side and began planning revenge. After a period of malicious incubation, on November 25, 1988, Mayano and 3 other teenagers from 16 to 18 years old, including Minato Nobuharu, Wanatabe Yasushi, and Joe Kamasaku, kidnapped Junko while she was in bed. Way home. After the arrest, they detained the girl at Joe Kamasaku's parents' house in Iase District, Tokyo. This was the beginning of the next 44 days of hell, when she was subjected to extremely horrifying torture. As for Junko Furuta's family, after their daughter disappeared, her parents began to worry and reported the incident to the police. However, those brutal kidnappers forced Junko Furuta to call her parents and tell them that she had run away from home and would stay at a friend's house, and that she was not in danger. Because she was too naive and immature, unable to realize what was coming to her, and also because she was too scared, Junko Furuta did what the kidnappers told her to do. The parents of Nobuharu Minato, one of the 4 young men who kidnapped Junko, visited their son several times, but Junko was forced to admit she was the girlfriend of one of them to deceive the other 2 parents. However, Minato's parents saw that she was clearly uncomfortable here and asked many questions. However, in the end they did not dare to do anything for fear of retaliation from leader Hiroshi Mayano. From here, Junko Furuta's series of bad days and unspeakable suffering began. On the first day, they forced her to take pictures together like lovers. She was kept in a state of undress and forced to have sex, serving their physiological needs every day. The kidnappers also invited their friends to join and took turns raping her up to 400 times. Not only that, the girl was also starved to the point of exhaustion. They fed her very little and also forced her to eat cockroaches and drink her own urine to stay alive. They forced her to take off her clothes and masturbate in front of them. They played animalistic games such as using lighters and cigarettes on her, stabbing sharp objects into sensitive areas of her body. In the following days, they tortured her brutally and non-stop. Smashed her head and face onto the concrete ground. Then, to satisfy their animalistic desires, they hung her arms from the ceiling as punch bag to beat her whenever they felt she was in a bad mood. 10 days after being abused, Furuta could not breathe through his nose due to blood clots in his nasal cavity. Her internal organs were severely damaged, causing her to vomit after eating. This further incited the cruel men, causing them to punish and beat her more. While her kidnappers were resting after drinking, she tried to call the police but was discovered and punished by burning her arms with a cigarette and pouring flammable liquid on her legs and feet. They seemed to want to burn her alive, using many unspeakably animalistic tricks to torture her. By December 10, 1988, she could not walk because her legs were severely burned. They continued to beat her with bamboo sticks. Her hand was crushed by weights and her nails were cracked. They used golf clubs to hit her. They used every possible way to torture and torment her. Even more disgusting, they lit cigarettes and stabbed sharp objects into sensitive areas, causing the girl extreme pain. They forced her to lie outside on the cold balcony. They changed the form of torture again, inserting needles into the chest area. Her left eye was cut and damaged by a pair of pliers. They even used hot light bulbs and scissors to stab her, causing her private area to bleed profusely, making it impossible for her to go to the bathroom normally. The injury was so severe that it took her more than an hour to crawl down to protect the lower floor. The pain was intense. At difficult times, Furuta asked her kidnappers to kill her, but they did not want to free her so easily. On the 40th day, she begged her attackers to kill her to end everything. As before, they disagree. On January 1, 1989, Junko welcomed the new year alone. The body was damaged, crushed, and could no longer move. On the 44th day of detention, April 1, 1989, they played a game together. She won and drove the kidnapper crazy. All four men beat the girl with an iron barbell, poured it over her legs, arms, face and stomach, then set her on fire. She vomited a lot of blood on her mouth and nose. This final attack lasts for 2 hours. Junko Furuta died later that day, in extreme pain and loneliness. The killers placed the girl's body in a barrel, filled it with concrete, and dumped it in Koto, Tokyo. It can be said that nothing in the world can compare to the 44 days of pain she had to go through. But in court, they all testified that they did not know the severity of her injuries and that they thought she was pretending. When Junko's mother heard the details of what her daughter had to go through, she fainted because she was so shocked and heartbroken. After that, she had to be treated in a mental hospital with nightmares and unimaginable pain. On the other hand, at the time the unfortunate girl was detained and tortured for many days at Kamisaku's house, his parents also lived there, knew everything that had happened but did not report it to the authorities. They fear revenge from their son and his group of bad friends. Junko Furuta tried many times to beg Kamisaku's family to help her, but they did nothing. Because Kamisaku at that time was a low-level leader of the Yakuza gang and he boasted that he could use his connections to kill anyone who stood in his way. All four perpetrators were later arrested and appeared in court. The identities of the kidnappers were kept secret by the courts because they were minors, even though they were tried as adults for the crimes they committed. However, some weekly newspapers stated their real names, demanding that human rights cannot be treated brutally. Furuta's real name and details about his private life have also been thoroughly published in the media. Kamisaku was tried as the mastermind. These predators confessed to kidnapping, raping, and torturing the girl. However, all of them asserted that they were not aware of the serious level of damage on Furuta's body. They thought that she was pretending and overdoing it. The four murderers offered a blatant defense to reduce responsibility, causing injury leading to death rather than intentionally committing a crime. In addition, the Kamisaku family sold their house for about 50 million yen to compensate the Furuta family. Torturing others is a way for these people to enhance their ego and self-worth. Being able to completely control an immobile person makes them feel like God in their drifting world. The scary thing is that these people never stop thinking of ways to make others suffer. They continuously devise and implement new attack methods. A cruel torture will not satisfy the criminal's demands. It's like eating a cake or a potato chip. It's hard not to eat a second one, or even a third one. Or if you drink coffee, over time, a little bit of coffee no longer gives you the same strong impact it once did. You need to drink more because you get used to it. Likewise, sadists need more blood every time they act. Therefore, in the above case, in the following days the criminals used more and more terrible and crazy torture methods. They simply need to attack more and more. In July 1990, the court sentenced the leader to 17 years in prison and his accomplices to 3 to 8 years in prison. The ringleader and 2 of his 3 accomplices appealed. Presiding Judge Ruji Yanasi then decided to increase the sentence out of caution because of the impact on the victim's family and the impact on society. The mastermind eventually received 20 years in prison, the second highest sentence after life imprisonment. In addition to these 4 names, based on evidence collected on the victim's body, the police arrested 2 other men, Koichi Hara and Tetsuo Nakamura. Other people involved in the case were not investigated and held responsible. Junko's family was truly devastated by the murderer's verdict. When some of the evidence of the crime against the girl was based on puzzling natural traces, semen, and tracking codes from the girl's body that did not match any of the arrested people, the lawyer decided that there were not enough configuration factors and they cannot be protected or protected further. There is speculation that the evidence was contaminated by multiple unknown people who murdered Furuta. Those beast men acted very cruelly, but their punishment was too light. Either way, these guys are now over 30 years old and have all been released from prison. Justice will never be done after more than 20 years. They deserve more punishment than what happened to Furuta, an innocent girl who had to go through unspeakable pain. The special and extremely unfair thing is that the leader who caused her death was only sentenced to a few years in prison and now that they is outside the law. Currently, all 4 perpetrators of the Furuta case have been released. They changed their names and surnames after being released from prison, and the criminals became honest people, except for one person, Joe Kamasaku. Joe Kamasaku was tried as the main accomplice of mastermind Hiroshi in the Junko Furuta murder case but was sentenced to the lightest sentence of 8 years in prison. At the time, Kamasaku was only 17 years old and he was released just before his 25th birthday. When he was released from prison, Kamasaku changed his name and was accepted to work at a technology company. With his new identity, Kamasaku quietly reintegrated back into society. However, over the next 5 years, Kamasaku returned to the Tokyo underworld and got into trouble with the law. In July 2004, Kamasaku was arrested for assaulting an acquaintance named Takatoshi Isono out of jealousy. Kamasaku followed Isono, threatened, beat and locked the victim in the trunk of the car, then took the victim from Adachi to Misato, then continued to assault and torture the victim for 4 hours. Kamasaku also threatened to kill and dispose of the victim's body. Like defendant Hiroshi, it is clear that Kamasaku has absolutely no remorse for his previous crimes. Throughout Isono's assault trial, Kamasaku denied all allegations of assault, intimidation the victim. However, in the end Kamasaku was still imprisoned for 7 years. Up to now, this sentence has ended and no one knows where Kamasaku is wandering after being released from prison. It can be said that the attack and murder of Junko Furuta caused a terrible shock in Japan. This has been an indelible stain in the criminal history of the land of the rising sun and is the inspiration for many comics, novels, and movies. At least 3 books inspired by this case have been published.
Junko Furuta's story is a somber reminder of the darkness that exists in the world, but also of the light that storytelling can shine on injustice, prompting reflection, awareness, and change. Thank you for joining us in remembering Junko and exploring the complexities of her case. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Case File. Together, let's continue to seek justice and truth. See you in the next episode.